Hi everyone. My name is Jules Orangel. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Global Ethics Month panel on sustainable travel. A little bit about me. I'm a sophomore at UNC, majoring in business administration and human organizational leadership and development with a minor in public policy. This past summer, I was fortunate to intern remotely at the UNC Office of Ethics and Policy and work in person in Copenhagen, Denmark with Josephine at TripDoodler, which is a sustainable travel startup based out of Copenhagen. So before we get started with the panel, I want to cover a few logistics for today's conversation. We will be recording the panel and it will be posted afterwards on the Office of Ethics and Policy's YouTube and social media channels. And additionally, the UNC Global Office is really excited about the conversation we're going to be having this afternoon. So they're anticipating using lessons from our conversation today in their pre-departure orientations if you are also involved with UNC Global or study abroad on campus. At the end of our panel, we're going to be having a short Q&A. So if you have a question at any point during the discussion, please use the chat panel at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll have the opportunity to ask the panelists your questions at the end of the session. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce this afternoon's panelist. So first is Josephine Piplits. She is the founder and CEO of TripDoodler, which is a sustainable travel startup based in Copenhagen. TripDoodler empowers conscious travelers with a database of sustainable choices to leave their best footprint on global environments, communities, and economies. With more than 20 years of experience in the travel space, she leads the TripDoodler team through international accelerators as the public beta program is launching this fall. She has held past roles at Impact Travel Copenhagen, Denmark Travel Agency Association, C&C Travel, and more. And ultimately, she believes we can make a better world through our travels and the power of travelers. Dr. Mike Piehler is UNC's Chief Sustainability Officer and Director of our Institute for the Environment here at UNC. He is a professor in the UNC Institute of Marine Sciences and holds joint faculty appointments in the Department of Marine Sciences, Department of Environmental Sciences and Engineering, and in the Environment, Ecology, and Energy program at UNC. His research focuses on material transport and processing and microbial communities at the coastal land-water interface. His research seeks to understand the effects of natural and anthropogenic stressors on the ecology and biogeochemistry of shallow water systems throughout the freshwater marine continuum. Study systems have included marshes, oyster reefs, shallow lakes, streams, and rivers throughout the Atlantic and Gulf Coast of the United States. He has published more than 80 papers and advises governments, non-governmental organizations, and the industry as a whole. And then finally, our last panelist is Tom Rhodes, who is an environmental specialist at the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, and he is the manager of the North Carolina GreenTravel Initiative. The NC GreenTravel Initiative is North Carolina's program to promote and assist tourism-oriented businesses with environmental technical assistance at no charge. Their website lists hotels, restaurants, attractions, and other destinations that are environmentally sustainable with a purpose to promote sustainable travel and provide a free platform in which green businesses can become more profitable. So with that, awesome, we're going to be moving into the main portion of our panel. The focus of today's discussion is going to be examining the ethics of the modern travel industry, most importantly, proposing sustainable solutions that support both the planet and its people as we explore the world or even our own backyards. So with that, we're going to begin our questions. The first question is going to be for all three of our panelists, and it is, what do you see as the biggest ethical issue in the travel industry right now, and why? So Mike, if we want to get started with you, with the biggest ethical issue in the travel industry.
Absolutely. So I'm not really in a position to talk too much about the industry at large, but thinking about the university, the biggest ethical issue for us is that our core includes some travel. It has to be a global university, to have our students have the experience that they should, to have our faculty make the contributions to solving the world's great problems, we need to travel some. So our ethical issue is, how do we travel well? And that has multiple levels. When you think about sustainability, as you've already alluded to in some of the introductory material, we think about sustaining environment, we think about sustaining economy. At the university, we have to think about also sustaining our mission. So how do we fulfill our mission and do it in a way that includes an understanding of what we know about how to travel best and balance the need to do the right thing, certainly for the environment, but also to do the right thing to do what we do well as a global university. And we have really explicit challenges within our management of greenhouse gases. For example, we had a new climate action plan last year. And if you look at that plan through our pathway to carbon neutrality in 2040, the remaining 21% at the end is mostly due to travel, because we can't eliminate it. We have to sustain travel, but we need to figure out how to do it better in the meantime. And I think we're well on our way.
Awesome. Thank you. So then we are going to head over and talk to Tom, if you want to give us kind of your take on ethical issues in the travel industry,
Sure.
specifically in North Carolina.
All right. Well, one of the things that is a major concern to me is climate impact of travel. Of course, we have to travel in order to learn more about other places and to help the economy. But we just have to help those destinations become more sustainable and to lower their impact of carbon footprint. And another thing that is of concern to me is human trafficking. I think that's really important to put a stop to this. And global warming is occurring at an alarming rate. And once we reach that tipping point, in global warming, there's no turning back. So we want to mitigate that.
Awesome. Totally agree. And if Josephine, you want to give us your perspective from over in Denmark on the travel industry.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I can echo what both Mike and Tom is saying. And I think what I then would like to add is one of the biggest challenges I see is that there's a huge appetite for traveling more sustainably with the traveling community. But there's also just an equally huge gap in the knowledge around how do we do that. One of the main questions I get when I talk to investors or stakeholders or consumers around when I present TripDoodler is, oh, sustainable travel, but how do we do that? Is that even possible? So I think that's one of the main challenges we have for actually turning this around.
Yeah, for sure. That knowledge is something that I think a lot of travelers are lacking, but hopefully with this panel today, we're able to offer some solutions. So awesome. Our next question is, how might sustainability efforts in the travel industry be positively or negatively affected in the next 10 years as a result of the pandemic? And how is that pandemic ultimately impacting the travel industry forever? If anyone has any ideas, you can feel free to jump in, or if not, we can do a little popcorn.
Okay, I think COVID-19 or some version of the virus will be with us continually. It's going to become endemic, and just like the influenza is that we have to have shots every year. I think that's going to have a profound impact on travel. Negatively, yeah, we have to be a lot more careful about our travel. But I believe that businesses are becoming more cognizant of the fact that they have to provide a safe and sustainable destination. So I think that businesses are coming around to requiring masks and inoculation proof and other things like that. I think that one of the things that we can do is look more toward nature-based travel. And I think that it's important to do things like camping and biking and local travel. I think that's important.
Awesome. Josephine, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, what I've seen during the pandemic is a lot of reports from especially the World Tourism Organization around how unequal the pandemic has hit different destinations and countries. I think us in the Western world, we don't have had the same impact in the sense that there's a lot of more rural areas and countries where tourism is a huge part of their of their GDP, right? So the impact of not traveling has been unequally balanced, or not unbalanced, unbalanced in the world. So I think that's one of the negatives, and around for the fact that we haven't been traveling for 1.5 years. I think on the positive side on COVID-19 is that it has woken up more travelers to be more conscious around how they travel, and be more conscious about actually going out to the industry and asking for more sustainable options. So I think that is a really positive. I think this is in general in how we live. I think the more sustainable way of living is coming forward, but we see this especially in the travel sector, and we can see that through different reports around what kind of travel people do. And I agree with Tom that nature travel is much more in focus, destinations less visited. So the whole Instagram travel, where you want to go to all the same places that everyone else and post these really nice pictures, is kind of going in another direction of trying to not go to the same places, but really go to less touristic places and supporting more local businesses that way.
For sure. And Mike, what are your thoughts on, or just like with the university, how is the pandemic impacting sustainability efforts here at UNC?
So it's been obviously not an experiment that we wanted to have happen, but in my first comments, I said we have to travel as a university, and we do. And having the pandemic happen and have to turn off the travel is a good way to reset and assess, do I really need to do that sort of thing? And so there are a handful of specific types of travel that we look at, including people finding their way, commuting and finding their way to work. So how we work might change, which I think could potentially be a positive, with more of a flexible approach to work in the future that could change the way people commute. Certainly the travel for research and the travel for things like study abroad were affected. And then looking and seeing, as we've had to do this unfortunate experiment of shutting it all down, what can we learn? And what of those things maybe can we move to another approach? Do you need to fly around the world to meet with one person? And I think a lot of people in a lot of different settings are asking those questions. I think that's really healthy and helpful.
Yes, for sure. Amazing. And I think especially Tom and Josephine, you talked about people potentially in the future wanting to go to less populated destinations or more local destinations just for safety reasons. So Tom, what is your advice for those looking to explore their own backyard here in Chapel Hill or in North Carolina as a state?
Yeah, there are a lot of options in North Carolina for sustainable travel and nature-based travel. And there are a lot of destinations that provide that. If you look at our website, NC GreenTravel.org, you can find those listed.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yes, I know. I believe Topo, or Top of the Hill restaurant, is listed on there, which is right on Franklin Street here for our students.
Right,
so,
absolutely.
Awesome. Josephine, we can start with you for the next question, and that is, what is your advice for those looking to travel more sustainably, but who struggle with a lower budget, like many of us students here today? Is it possible to see the world while also prioritizing sustainability and affordability?
The short answer is yes. I definitely believe that it is. And I think I have some good news in the sense that when we look at sustainability and travel, we tend to focus very much on the environmental impact, right? And I think, that is important. And this is something that we need to focus on. If you look into how does the World Tourism Organization define tourism and sustainable tourism, they have outlined 3 pillars: the environmental, the social, cultural, and the economical part. And I think and they have an equal way of importance. And I think especially the economical part we saw through the pandemic with this uneven balance of impact of travelers not coming to the destinations. So I think when you're a student and you're looking to do more sustainable travel, you can't embrace all of it at once. So one of the things that is important for you to ask yourself is, what do I find is most important for me in regards to sustainability? Is that supporting local communities, indigenous people, or the cultural aspect of travel? Is that focusing on supporting traveling less with a less impact on the environment, or could it be also to support local businesses and really try to strive local economy and through tourism, and that way make your choices on how you travel. And most of all these really sustainable options you will find are smaller local places. I think Tom also talked a little bit about that. So it's all these local places where if you choose those, you actually also support a more sustainable way of travel and a more sustainable way of being a tourist. And those almost always also have a lower price tag attached to them.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yes, I totally agree. I think a lot of people are really seeing in the pandemic the benefits of getting outside. And if you choose to camp in your destination, for instance, versus staying at a hotel, not only is that going to be cheaper, but it's much better for the environment. So awesome. Okay, Mike, I'm going to pop over to you. What is your advice for people with a lower budget?
So I think that there are clear choices you make. As has been indicated, it's not always about the environment. We think first, primarily as we think about the university sustainability, we think first about our carbon footprint, but I do think that it's clear that you can make choices that are not extractive, that lead you to smaller places. As an institution, we are really intentional in trying to have our programs not be extractive, but rather have them be going to a place and being of that place rather than just observing it and measuring it. We have great examples from our travel database that the most common trip made by faculty at this university is to Washington, D.C. by plane. And so if you're a tourist with not a lot of money and you want to go to Washington, D.C., you can drive, and that will be helpful, certainly from an environmental perspective. So there are choices like those. And I think it's a great point that there's just not advice or guidance out there for people who already know they want to do the right thing, and even more still for those who just don't understand the choices they're making. So I think that information piece is critical, and we're working hard to try and do that and to be sure that we're thinking about all of the facets of sustainability. And because the university is committed to all of them, it's certainly well within all of our strategic plan and things that the university tries to do for the state and the world.
Awesome. So Mike, you're saying that not all of us have the information, but Tom over here with the NC GreenTravel Initiative does. So Tom, how are you trying to spread that and share that advice with everyone who seeks it out?
Well, of course, our website, and we have a Facebook page and Twitter feed that we send out kudos to our members periodically. Every week I send out information about one particular destination that is doing a great job and help them to promote their business.
Awesome. Okay, so our next question, in my work with Josephine at TripDoodler, we sometimes talk about different types of tourism, like voluntourism or cruises that have not the most sustainable footprint. So what do you three panelists see as the ethical implications involved with those types of tourism? Again, voluntourism, cruises, etc. And what alternatives to these types of travel will leave the most positive footprint on the world and communities within it? So Tom, I guess if we want to start with you on that question.
Okay, well, I personally volunteer aboard a tall ship once a month, the Elizabeth II in Manteo, North Carolina. By doing so, I've been able to sail to different destinations along the coast and teach younger people about how our country started and the first colony that came here. And I think it's a wonderful way to give back to the community and teach, as well as seeing new ports of call.
Awesome. Mike, what are your thoughts on the ethical implications with certain types of travel?
So I think I started to talk about it a little in the last answer, just that mostly university programs are pretty intentional in trying not to be extractive. But I will say, in doing science and going places and taking data, you have to be really cognizant of coming to that place from a position of respect and coming to that place to fit into it rather than just observe it and extract and go away. So I think that on the research side, it goes even a step further in that as you gather data about a place, you've traveled to it, and even if you are respectful, you need to continue that by sharing the information you find with the people who you visited as a part of your travel there.
Mm. Awesome. And I know, Josephine, a lot of your passion in the sustainable travel world lies in that social, cultural aspect. So what is your advice to seek more sustainable alternatives?
But I think it's as Mike is saying, it's being very conscious about how you actually approach the destinations that you go to and the people who live there, and being very aware of the impact that you actually have as a tourist. I think I would like to make a little. I mean, you remember that we did the webinar. We hosted a webinar in Impact Travel Alliance in Copenhagen around volunteerism, where we were talking about this specific topic. And I think some of the highlights from that we can actually use in all the different kind of travels that we do. So it's being very conscious about what it is that you want to provide to that community, but actually more important, what can they provide to you? So you leave the destination better off when you leave than when you came. I'm sorry for the way I express myself, it's my English, but so it's when you go and do volunteerism, like Tom is doing, he's using his skills to actually provide some additional knowledge. A lot of the volunteerism that's going on today is just, us wanting to go out and maybe help a little bit, but we're not that conscious about what skills could we actually bring into that setting. What is the, I mean, if you as a volunteer go in and work in a kindergarten somewhere, you need to have, the basic training of actually doing that. Otherwise, it's not volunteerism, it's actually taking jobs out of the local people who are living there. And I think it is, so that webinar that we did is actually, if you really want to learn more about volunteerism, it's a quite insightful one. So maybe you can share that with the university and with the students. And I think that, yeah, what is the most important questions to ask when you want to do a social impact? There's so many questions. I'm just thinking about what's the most important one because one of the things that, I don't know if you've mentioned that in any way, but one of the things that we are developing is an algorithm, right, for user rating on sustainability. So supporting and complementing what the likes of Tom is doing around the back of the house sustainability ratings. We are actually making it possible for consumers to rate sustainability based on what they see and what they experience. And some of the questions we ask in the social part is around indigenous people, around local staffing. It's all about, I mean, social tourism is also about diversity. So the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion questions around. So it's also really important to ask when you want to do a social impact on your travel. But it's a little bit of a broad question to answer shortly, which I apparently did not do. I do apologize.
No, you're wonderful. Thank you. So yeah, I like that we're all talking about that intention, like Tom bringing skills to make that biggest impact where you're both receiving something positive in that exchange. So awesome. I have great answers, everyone. The next question is a bit of a tricky one. Who do you, the panelists, view as the responsible parties in making travel more sustainable? Should that responsibility fall on the corporations themselves, on the tourist, and who really has a seat at the table in this conversation? Mike, let's start with you.
So I think it's going to have to be a all hands on deck approach. I think to have real change, everyone needs to be involved. Certainly as someone who travels, having the information to allow you to do so in a sustainable way will send a message to the people providing the services that you are looking for certain things. I booked a ticket last night and was offered the chance to offset my carbon footprint. So I think that's progress, certainly where individuals are being allowed to take an action, but it's in a lot of cases, we rely on corporations like airlines to be a part of the conversation. But I think if the whole group is not involved, then if all parties are not involved, then there won't be the progress that there should be.
Totally amazing. And I saw Josephine, your face lit up when Mike was saying it's all hands on deck. So what are your thoughts? Is it the corporations, the tourists?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. It's all hands on deck. I do also believe that we need to see a paradigm change in how we consume, not just in travel, but in general. So I think, and I do believe, and you know this because you've been working with us, I do believe that we as consumers has a huge power with where we spend our dollars. So actually insisting on making more sustainable choices and figuring out how do I do this, and just make one sustainable choice at the time, but really being very much aware that we as persons also have a very big saying in this. But I do agree, with Mike, that we need the airlines to offer the carbon emission, and we need the scientists to figure out how we do less, how we do new biofuel with less carbon emission, et cetera, et cetera. But as a consumer, we do have a choice, and we do have an obligation to actually speak without how we spend our money.
For sure. And Tom, will wrap this question up with you. Who's really responsible in making sustainable travel a reality?
Again, it's all hands on deck. It's as both the lodging, dining, attractions, other travel destinations individually have a choice as to how they're going to approach different aspects of tourism and becoming more sustainable. Also, the consumer has a lot of pull when it comes to saying, well, I'm not going to stay at this certain place or eat at that restaurant if they're not sustainable. So they can send a definite message to them by demanding sustainability.
For sure, there's a lot of power in our wallets and where we choose to bring them. So, okay, the next question is obviously, as Josephine mentioned earlier, a lot of the developing world relies on tourism to make up the majority of their GDP. So how can we best visit these developing regions of the world without taking advantage of local communities there and the resources that they need? Josephine, let's start with you on that one.
I guess one of the main ways of making sure that you don't do that is really investigate a little bit on what is it that you are actually visiting. What is the country? How does the culture? How is the culture like? What is the customs there? And what is and really try to. I don't think it's investigate, but before you go, really try to familiarize yourself with the place that you are actually going to. I think one way also is to try and seek out locals. Right now there's a lot of platforms where you can interact with locals before you go, to try and get a better sense also of how to do that and how to go about it. I think again, choosing your places to stay, your places to eat, the things that you do from a perspective of supporting local economies and local society. So local communities. So if you're going to a place where they have a large indigenous community, make sure that you actually go in and support that by again placing your dollars where it makes more sense. So I think that's the research that you do before you travel is very important.
So planning is a big thing, and Tom, you have so many resources in your role. How can we best visit and support those local communities?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We can well, of course, refer to the NC GreenTravel program and other programs around the country and in other countries that support sustainable tourism. I think that planning is essential, and knowing where to go and what to do to support economies, volunteering your time when possible, and giving what resources that you might have.
And a lot of that is also through word of mouth as well, that if your friend travels somewhere and has a really impactful experience in that community, hopefully they will have met local people or participated in a local organization that they can refer to you if you're also interested in visiting. So I love that. And Mike, we'll wrap it up with you. I know UNC takes people all over the world, and what is your advice for people who are going to more developing regions of the world?
I think just echoing what's been said already, and it's looking from the beginning and recognizing that being a tourist alone and spending dollars traveling to a place doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a positive impact, and figure out on the front end, to the extent you can, how can you direct the activity that you're going to be doing to have the impact that you want.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay, so this question I think is going to be mostly geared towards Josephine, because I know you're very active in the social media world of travel. But do you view the social media and travel influencers as a positive or a negative for sustainability, and why?
I need Kamai now for this answer, right? Our CMO, she's definitely the most knowledgeable around this. I think it has two sides. I think I do really believe that travelers sharing experiences and with other travelers is key for us to have a more sustainable way of doing it. And I think that that the social medias are really excellent in to do that. One of the challenges I see is that when we talk about sustainability in travel, the main vehicle we have available is #sustainable travel or #ecotravel, which for me leaves out a little bit of integrity sometimes, not in all the time, but I'm really missing this true stamp of validation that what you're sharing with me in #sustainable travel actually has some kind of sustainability around it, whether that's social, economical, or environmental, right? And which is one of the things that we're trying to do with TripDoodler and the user rating that we have. So we're providing all these travelers who are sharing. We know 85% of all travelers are sharing their trips online, right? So all of these travelers that are sharing and are wanting to share sustainability as well and showcase to others how sustainable the experiences that they've had actually is, this user rating capability that we are developing, right? That will add in a level of integrity. So I think it's the two side. I think it makes sense for us to share, because that's how we prefer to have recommendations today. But I also see that there's a challenge, and you are specifically asking also about Gen Z, and we've done a lot of studies around Gen Z on what is actually important, and we do see that the travel industry is now trying to implement. I think Google has this now, eco-certified hotels or whatever, but it's just scraping the surface, right? When for the studies that we've done, the Gen Z, they don't really. I mean, that's not enough. They want to have the full Monty. They want to really understand the impact, really understand how sustainable is this, and is looking for that extra level of integrity. So until we build that in to the whole sharing capability, I think it's a challenge.
Mm-hmm. For sure, a double-edged sword, as most things in the sustainability world. But I know one of the destinations that I've studied a lot for internships and in school is the issue of like Horseshoe Bend, for instance, in the Grand Canyon region of the United States, that social media influencers posting there has increased foot traffic significantly, but then that creates issues of over-tourism and erosion of the ecosystem. So Mike and Tom, what are your thoughts on preventing over-tourism with that rise in social media?
So I think it's just the case that we've talked about over and over again, is there's that balance. And I think there's always a balance with sustainability. I wonder with the influencers and social media, whether some of that could have an effect of getting people to have the experience of being a place that they can't travel to. So in that sense, do you have a little bit of a lessening of the pressure? But as far as creating the fads and creating everyone rushing to a single place, that's clearly problematic. And there are lots of examples of all of the things about sustainability, whether they be societal or environmental or economic, where that can really be a problem. So I think it's just a matter of, like everything, of trying to balance the good with the challenges that can result.
Mm-hmm. Tom, any thoughts on raising up the reputations of smaller destinations to prevent that over tourism?
Yeah, I think that is an excellent idea. I think that it depends on what the influencer is promoting, spending money or sustainability, and it's really important to strike that delicate balance there.
Mhm. Awesome, totally agree. Okay, so our last question for this more formal Q&A is a little more positive. So we're gonna ask you guys to identify one positive change that you're currently witnessing in the travel industry, and what is that change? So Tom, if we want to popcorn back to you and you can get us started on that positivity.
Okay, well, I noticed that a lot of travel destinations in North Carolina, not all, but many, are providing safer travel, upgrading their cleaning, and making sure that people are wearing masks, and they're doing things that are going to mitigate the problem of COVID-19. I think they are making sure that the places are cleaner and better, well managed.
Awesome. Mike, what about you?
I think it's the whole idea of weighing the need for travel and thinking about the trip you're taking and what is its purpose and how should you make it and do you need to make it? And I think for us, it's a good thing to have people wondering whether the trips that they took for granted are always those that they need to take. Because if you think about the sustainable from the environment perspective, almost always not traveling is a better choice in that regard. But through the full spectrum, just weighing, do I need to take the trip? And if yes, what should it look like?
Mhm. Yeah, the intentionality and kind of limiting to really focus your resources and your energy on making a smaller number of trips sustainable is for sure important. I mean, Josephine, what about you? What is the positive change you're really proud to see?
I think the most positive change I've seen is a little bit goes in the same direction as Mike, is that travel doesn't have to be across the world, right? Travel can also be within your own country, or it could be to your neighboring country. So this attention to not necessarily having to go across the world to do a nice holiday, but actually you can have really cool experiences within a closer range, I think is very positive. And then I also do think that it's very positive that we see a significantly higher consumer attention and demand, because I do believe that we need that to really drive changes in the industry as well.
Awesome, for sure. Okay, so this marks the end of our prepared questions, and we'll be now moving on to some of the questions from our audience. So if anyone has any questions for our three lovely panelists, please feel free to type them in the chat and we'll ask them on your behalf. While people are typing their questions, I want to give our panelists a quick chance to kind of elaborate a little bit more on their organization and how it supports sustainable travel, because we are so honored to have the three of you here today. So Tom, if you want to give a little plug to NC GreenTravel and how our audience can potentially use that resource in the future, we would love it.
Right, certainly. NC GreenTravel is a recognition program, very similar to a certification that businesses can apply online and get awarded a free website, free place on our website, linking to their website, and also certificates of sustainability. And I think that's a great win-win for everybody, because consumers know where they can go to be more sustainable, and those businesses can grow their business, their economy.
Awesome, lovely. And Matt just dropped the NC GreenTravel website in our chat. So if anyone's interested in seeing what sustainable travel options are in North Carolina, feel free to check out that link. But thank you, Tom. Josephine, what is TripDoodler and how can it support sustainable travel choices?
Yeah, so TripDoodler is a platform where conscious travelers can find and share verified sustainable travel options with like-minded travelers. And it's all powered by our proprietary algorithm for sustainable user ratings. So basically what we've created is the opportunity for us as travelers to rate sustainability, even if we don't know anything about sustainability. We've created a framework that makes it easy for all of us when we are out there experiencing our travel experiences to rate sustainability in this framework. And one of the questions could be like, does this hotel have water reducing initiatives promoting? Do the restaurants have vegan options, or does the hotel have recycling bins for you, etc., etc.? So you have we give you the things to look for. You look for it and you tell us if it's there or if it's not, and then our algorithm provides it with a score, and then you can share that on the platform, but eventually also it's going to be shared in the tourism industry in general. So it is complementing all the work that Tom is doing on the backside of the companies with a user rating of how is that actually perceived by the users. And you can do that with TripDoodler and share it with your like-minded travelers and friends.
Awesome. So I just sent the link to the TripDoodler website, and you can learn more about that initiative as well, and potentially start using our beta platform. Okay, and then Mike, tell us a little bit about Sustainable Carolina, and specifically what steps the university is taking to make travel more sustainable.
Absolutely. So Sustainable Carolina is our new sustainability framework for the university community. Our goal is to sustain the mission of the university, but do it in a way that is sensitive to sustainability in all its tenets. Last year, as I mentioned, we put out a new climate action plan, which takes us to carbon neutrality by 2040 instead of 2050, which is more aggressive than our last plan. A big part of that, as I mentioned, around 20% of our total emissions are related to travel. So we certainly put a lot of thought into what guidance can we provide to help us meet this goal of carbon neutrality while still doing the things we need to do as a university. And at some point, we're going to have to offset some of these carbon emissions, and then offsetting them in a way that fits with this same framework is really important, being sensitive to the economies and to the cultures of the places where the people are traveling. So trying to do meaningful offsets. So we are at sustainable.unc.edu. We're a big, broad umbrella for all the sustainability activities at the university, and we're excited to be making great progress.
Awesome. Okay, I see we have a question for the panelists. So sorry, this came to me through direct message. How can students become more involved or contribute to sustainable travel initiatives on campus or independently?
So there are lots of ways. We have a sustainability council that meets twice a semester, and we have 2 undergraduate members on that council. And there are ways to engage with the council directly, but also through those 2 student members with an environmental coalition, which is constituted by all the leaders of environmental organizations on campus. There are lots of great student organizations on campus, so there are plenty of opportunities to participate that way, but there are also direct opportunities to work with Sustainable Carolina, and that's building out as we move into the future.
Awesome. Well, if anyone's interested in that council, it sounds like a wonderful opportunity. And then Tom and Josephine, do you have any tips for students? Josephine, if people go abroad to Denmark, what can they do to get involved? Tom, what can students do in North Carolina?
Well, students in North Carolina can, of course, refer to our website to choose sustainable travel and demand that businesses do that, so they can help the economy and to make other places more sustainable, and to promote that to other businesses as well.
Amazing. Josephine, what's going on over there in Europe?
No, I think the most important thing is, of course, to ask for the sustainable option. So whoever is planning your trip, if you go to a travel agency when you're traveling abroad, make the request. So how can I measure the sustainability of this trip? And you probably can't get a full answer on that yet, but at least you show that you have an interest, right? If you plan it yourself, you can spend more time on your planning and searching and really, but it is a little bit of a hassle today. So what I can really recommend is that as soon as we launch our beta for rating, you should go in and rate all the sustainability initiatives that you see on your way and share them with people. And if you can't do that in our beta, just do it in general. So be very conscious about how you share sustainability among you, but make sure that you do it.
Mhm. Awesome. We have another question, kind of a fun, lighthearted one. Is there any sustainable travel activity that you personally have gotten to engage in the last few years that really stuck out to you as a bright memory? Whether that's a cool bike trip or a sustainable restaurant.
For me, it was visiting my son, who was a study abroad student in Copenhagen. So it was going to Copenhagen and experiencing that lifestyle that was very much and with all of the ethical things we're talking about.
Yes, my summer in Copenhagen as well was really eye-opening, just because Denmark does truly prioritize environmental, social, and economic sustainability in just their way of life. So I enjoyed the biking versus driving and all of the vegan options for food, etc. So Josephine, I think you were also about to share a sustainable memory.
Yeah, no, I didn't know who the question was for, but I think, we do that at home. So we try to bring that abroad when we travel. So we try to bike everywhere. So I've been biking in the Atacama Desert in Chile, and we've been biking in Rome in the Seven Hills. And so I think it's for us, when I travel sustainably, it's really bringing that lifestyle with me wherever I go and try and do it, in the same way.
Awesome. Tom, what about you?
Well, again, I have to echo my voyages aboard Elizabeth too. It's so nice to volunteer, because I'm a mast climber, and I just enjoy it so much, sitting up in the working tops and looking down on the pardon me, my phone's ringing. And I'm climbing on the mast and out setting the sails and all that. It's just a wonderful experience, and getting to speak with the students who visit our ship. It's amazing teaching them about life in the colony.
Amazing. One of the students just sent me another question. So he's a student at UNC, and he's talking about how in school we learn about how some countries like Costa Rica use ecotourism as a way to generate state revenue in a sustainable manner, and how there's a lot of benefits associated with that state-sponsored ecotourism. Do you think that ecotourism actually brings about all these benefits and sustainable practices, or does it do more harm? I'll give you guys a couple seconds to think, and then I think we can start with Tom.
Okay, I think it might have a positive impact. So, bringing people in because they want to be sustainable and they want to travel sustainability. I think that's important.
Amazing. Mike, what about you? I know some of our study abroad programs, for instance, really focus on that ecotourism. Do you think it is actually bringing about those benefits?
I hope so. I think I'd defer to the experts on this one. I think Josephine probably knows a lot better than I do, but it certainly is our intention for sure.
Awesome. Josephine, so what do you think?
I think, people are going to travel anyway, right? So I think the more we can get them to travel sustainably, the better, even if it's not 100% sustainable, right? The more sustainable choices people make, the better in general. I think when it comes to verifying if it actually has a positive impact or not, at the moment, the only way we can do that is really look for the certifications that are out there. So there is quite a lot of certifications in tourism today. And it's a horrible jungle to find your way around in. But one of the ways to find a way around is to look for certifications that are accredited by the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. And I know a lot of the establishments that are using the eco-travel as a branding, they do have that certificate, most of these certifications. But I would say that if you are unsure if it has a positive impact, the only way right now is to really look for the certifications and trust those, because they are the more experts than I am also. So it's yeah.
Okay, amazing. So if anyone has any other questions, I know a lot of people have sent them to me through direct message, or feel free to send them publicly in the chat, but speak now or forever hold your peace. Give people a couple seconds if they have one last burning question. But if not, we're a couple minutes under time, but no worries. But before we go, I again really want to thank our panelists who took the time out of their days to join us from across the state and even across the ocean. So thank you for a wonderfully rich and diverse discussion with different perspectives on sustainable travel. I want to also say thank you to everyone who tuned in today. Reminder, this discussion will be posted on the Office of Ethics and Policy's YouTube and social media platforms, as well as being used in future pre-departure orientations for UNC Global. So I hope you all have a good rest of your week. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy Tuesday.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.